Hey everyone, this is Sleepy Reader 666 with another one of my sleepy vlogs, number 19, since I still keep keeping track of it. This one may be even more trivial than my normal trivialities. It's just going to be kind of talking about what I've been reading lately. And I've been trying on various ways and videos to talk about stuff I've been reading lately, and it just seems to go wrong every time I do it. I really hope it works this time. Sometimes technical difficulties. Sometimes I play it back and it's so hideously boring that I just can't even stand the thought of watching it again. Um, and maybe part of the problem is that I've been reading a lot of digital comics, and perhaps I should have been talking about them a few at a time. Instead, I've got this huge logjam in my head of digital comics I've read. The main reason for so much digital comics, along with the fact that I just have this big backlog of digital comics available to me to read, is that I continue to have a really busy summer, and the opportunities to read are at odd times or odd places. For instance, if I wake up at 3 in the morning and I can't sleep, I pull my iPad out from under my bed and read a few comic books. It doesn't bother my wife, doesn't wake her up or anything. So it's really handy. If I left comic books lying under my bed, they would get squished and torn up and stuff, and rumpled when I try to read them in bed too, and attacked by my daughter. So I still want to run through some things, and I want to thank people who've given me digital codes lately. One is Cameron, Mr. Hex. Check out his channel if you haven't. Guy over in the UK. He sent me a Wolverine. It was a Savage Wolverine number 5 or 6, the beginning of the new arc that's happening. I think it's kind of cool. I just realized, I guess, that Savage Wolverine is going to be out of continuity stories done by different teams, I guess, every arc. And that seems like a really good way to go with an overused character like Wolverine. If you're going to do more by him, do some out of continuity stuff. And this one has really great artwork by Joe Madeira and is done for laughs. And I enjoyed it, but I also worried about the thought of Wolverine becoming like another Deadpool. The direction that Wolverine's gone in as someone who will kill all the time for any reason, or that's the way it seems in this book, just isn't the Wolverine of my memory, who I think of as someone who will kill and go there when he has to. He's the one who will do what has to be done, but only under extreme or certain circumstances. And I've read some other Wolverine books in the past year or so that he just seemed to always just end up killing a lot of people. Anyway, I don't want to preach about that. Sorry about that. Speaking of killing a lot of people, Brandon White, he didn't kill a lot of people. He sent me the codes for Thanos Rising. And so I've read up through issue 3, and it's really excellent. It's killer art, good script. Just it feels so far like it's true to Thanos, but viewed in a light that I haven't viewed him in before. And Thanos as a serial killer, basically. I'm interested to see where it's going to go next. How are they going to move from Thanos as kind of the serial killer jumping around the galaxy doing serial killing? And they found some very intense stuff for him to do. But how are they going to move him on to be kind of the cosmic villain that we know he becomes? That transition from your run-of-the-middle psycho to the major villain of the Marvel Universe could be very interesting. And another person who's given me codes is Matt Agent 42Q. He gave me the codes to X-Men the Brian Wood X-Men, the Women X-Men, the Wood X-Men, W X-Men as someone called it. And the first issue of that was really good. The second issue was kind of boring. I had trouble finishing it, but hopefully it'll improve as it goes along. Kind of connecting to there, then I've been reading some Brian Wood Conans. I bought on sale a lot of digital codes there from the Dark Horse website. Brian Wood is doing a series about Belette. It's Conan and Belette. Belette is the Queen of the Black Coast, the pirate queen who Conan hooks up with and falls madly in love with. And Brian Wood seems to be focused most on what their relationship is and what makes love for them and stuff. But it's not really clicking with me. It's not really making sense. The character of Conan and Belette don't feel like consistent people to me yet. Maybe you could say it's because they're in the midst of puppy love, but I feel like they're too old and too experienced to just be in a puppy love kind of state. So it's become a very weird series. I'll probably still get it when it's on sale or whatever, because I've been reading Conan all my life. And I'm curious to see this new direction with Conan and see if anything will come of it. But I don't have very high expectations at this point. And I don't really recommend it to anyone to go out and get. What it is really good, and I would highly recommend, and many people have recommended these before, is the current Valiant comics. The ones I've been getting when they have digital sales are Harbinger and Exo Man of War. And they're both fantastic. Harbinger, I'd say, is a more familiar feeling book. It could almost be looked at as a riff on the X-Men or something. But it always feels fresh and exciting and very, very involving. It reads very fast, which may be part of why I never switched over to buying it in floppies for $4 an issue. But I would eventually maybe like it if it comes out eventually in like meaty hardcovers, like 12 issues at a time or something. That might be a really good way to read it. And same thing for Exo Man of War. It reads really fast, but it's really excellent, and it doesn't feel like anything else. I suppose some people say, well, it's kind of like Green Lantern, maybe, but just a faintly like Green Lantern, outer space heroics, I suppose. But that one's really excellent too. The weird thing about Valiant is the artists change all the time, but you don't even notice it that much. Maybe the colorists keep a very consistent hand on the way the books look. And I've got to think that Valiant has a very good editorial approach, however it is they do it, because they're working with writers who also work with other companies, but their work at Valiant seems to be their best work. So something about the atmosphere at Valiant or the editorial guidance there really works well. So I plan to dig deeper into their other books soon. And then, there's lots of other stuff, because as I say, I've built up a backlog of codes that I bought when they were cheap on sale. I read some Axe Cop, which I can kind of take or leave. It's a cute kind of thing, but not something I need to read a lot of. And then the other thing that's been taking up a lot of my digital reading time lately is Marvel Unlimited. I've actually had a Marvel Unlimited subscription for about 3 years. And I read it a lot at first, at a time when I wasn't getting comic books at all, before I got an iPad, I guess, and didn't have time for anything. And it's so cheap that I just kept renewing it. But now they have an iPad app, and it has become much more useful to me. I know that Comic Book Mom uses their iPad app, so I've been reading lots lots of their back issues, Marvel back issues that they've got. They don't feature anything that's less than 3 months old. Sometimes maybe they wait 6 months or more, and they also do some other weird things. But like I've read the first 5 issues of the Captain Marvel, the Marvel Now Captain Marvel, the woman Captain Marvel, and people have said that it's quite good. And for some reason, I didn't believe anybody. I don't know why. I just didn't believe it was going to be any good. But I read it. Those first 5 issues are excellent. So now I'm much more interested in Kelly Sue DeConnick as a writer, and I would like to read all the rest of this series, either maybe in trades or digitally, probably preferably in trades. But she's doing really interesting things with time travel, and using the time travel adventure to kind of tell us a lot about Carol Danvers and her life as a pilot and her influence as a pilot and the importance of being a woman pilot to her. And where I left off in the series, the time travel is now bringing her back to her own origins as a superhero. So it's also turning out to be kind of a clever way, not only for Kelly Sue DeConnick to establish the character the way she wants, but I'm guessing, because it'll be happening in the issues that haven't come out on Marvel Unlimited yet, I'm guessing that she's going to use all this time travel stuff as a way to re-examine Captain Marvel's origins as a superhero too. Back when she was Ms. Marvel. And I don't actually remember her origin story, so maybe I can dig that up on the Marvel Unlimited. Another thing that I read on Marvel, a few issues, the first few early issues on Marvel Unlimited from Marvel Now, a lot of Marvels in my mouth, that people have been saying is really good, and it did turn out to be good, is X-Men Legacy. They just have I've just read the first 2 issues, and they really were something different, clever take on this guy who's kind of insane with all these powers, Charles Xavier's son, David Xavier, I believe. And they show us the inside of his brain as kind of this science fiction-y insane asylum, with each of his powers having a different personality, and it's really cool. And the book does a thing that I could imagine getting tired of, but maybe not, because I don't hear anyone complaining about it. But in the captions, it's always kind of a jokey inner monologue done by David. He's got kind of a sarcastic, snarky, jokey approach to the really kind of tragic and awful things that are going on with him. Maybe that makes all the tragedy of what's happening to him so far bearable. Another interesting thing, and maybe one of those rare occasions where digital is better for me, was I read the Marvel Now Deadpool #3. I'd read 1 and 2 on floppies, and I liked them okay, but not enough to keep getting it. And when I read #3 digitally, I really liked it a lot more. I don't know, maybe the 3rd issue became funnier, but it just seemed funnier to me, and the art looked nicer to me. And it was because the coloring on a digital screen looked really good. And before, I'd found the coloring kind of muddied over the story and just made my reading of it awkward, or less. I just couldn't get into it as much, and I got into it much more digitally. So are those rare books where you get into them more digitally. More often than not, the digital kind of, I think I've said this before, maybe just to Travis, the digital kind of flows through my head like water. It goes by quickly and pleasantly, but it doesn't feel like it really sticks in my brain that much. Although, digital on an iPad is so much better than on a computer screen, so there's definitely an okay experience. And in fact, with this Marvel Unlimited, with so many comic books at your fingertips, and it being sort of in this flowing digital thing, a lot of times I've got a bunch of West Coast Avengers here that I've been glancing at. But that's what I do. I glance at them. I don't really read them. I can flip through the pages really quickly and think, well, maybe I'll come back and read them later. So there's a lot of stuff that I haven't been reading. It's sort of maybe like being in an enormous comic book store and just flipping through the pages. One thing I did read was a 3-issue arc of Captain America that I must have read as quite a small child, and I remembered copying. Some of these comics were ones I remember copying the panels to learn how to draw, or trying to learn how to draw, or just because I wanted more comic books. So these were comic books. I may have only had one issue of the 3 even that I really lived with as a kid, because I might have only had 2 or 3 comic books. And those were Captain America 157, 158, and 159, where he's fighting the Viper and some other villains. And there's a unseen villain named the Hooded Commander, who, I'm going to spoil it, who turns out to be Captain America's police partner, and who he believed was innocent. Captain America during this period is working undercover as a police officer in New York City, along with doing his Captain America stuff. So as Steve Rogers, he's a police officer. And the villain, I probably totally did not understand this as a kid. The villain, named Venom, who I thought was a really cool villain as a kid, is someone who works in advertising and spends all his time spouting advertising kind of double talk. And because he's in advertising, is so overconfident that he can beat Captain America and the Falcon. And he comes very close. He kills them. He nearly kills them with his venom. I remember trying to figure out as a kid how to draw an explosion. And I spent hours trying to copy this particular panel where Captain America's caught in an explosion. It doesn't strike me now as a particularly amazingly drawn explosion, but it's funny how it just triggers this. As a kid, I had this intensity of trying to figure things out, and it just brings that feeling back to me. So it's funny seeing, as a kid, I read the comic books for the way they looked. And by that I mean the meaning I got out of them had a lot to do with the way they look. And so this villain, Venom, looked really cool and sinister, but if you read his dialogue and understand it as an adult, it's very kind of silly and funny. And I think this was co-written by Steve Gerber with Steve Englehart. So I get a feeling of that Steve Gerber kind of satire to it. And I know that I understood Steve Gerber as a satirist probably just a few years later when he did Howard the Duck. But at this very early time, when I might have been 8 or 9 reading it, it just went over my head. But I loved it anyway. Another thing I noticed with these reprints in Marvel Unlimited is they include the letters pages, even when the letters page has the statement about the statement that the U.S. Postal Service required them to put in comic books back then about their business, how they're distributed, and there was always a section that said how many comics were sold average of the past 12 months and how many comics in the nearest date to filling out the form. And so these Captain Americas were selling about 170,000 copies a month at the time, which I think is 1973. But they were printing, so they were sending out to newsstands like 250,000 copies. So they were practically having to print 2 copies for every 1 copy that's sold. So we talk about how incredible the circulation of comics was back then compared to now. And certainly it is. But that was a very expensive way to sell comic books, where you had to send out, so you had to pay the printing and mailing costs of nearly 100% more than you would actually end up getting money for as the publisher. So it was quite expensive. Now, they probably made a bigger portion of their income off of advertising and everything. But and now there's lots of comic books that sell like 12 or 14,000 even from Marvel and DC. So that's like a tenth of what they used to sell. But they don't have to deal. The comic book stores now are the ones who deal with the unsold comic books. So the publishers now know exactly how many comics to print, and they don't lose any money off of unsold comic books. So it's a very different landscape. Probably has made comic book publishing much easier, the era of comic book stores. Then it must have taken a large capital investment to swallow all kinds of unsold comic books back then. I'm getting even sleepier. So I think I had more things to say, but I think I've hit the wall of sleepiness, and so I'm going to leave it at that. Those are kind of the random stuff I've been doing lately in my comic book life. I've been watching or mostly listening to a lot of videos at work, and I haven't had time to watch much at home. Some videos I watch a few videos every evening on my iPad. So to those of you who I've just been listening to, I apologize. But I think with most videos that works fine. Certainly with mine, there's been nothing to look at. Just drifting away here. So talk to you all later. Bye-bye. Oh, you know what? Before I shut this down, No, cut it off there. Talk to you later. Now I'm being really mysterious.